NBA home. He's agreed to a one-year deal with the LA Lakers worth $6.5 million. That's the mid-level exception, according to reports. Walker averaged 12 points a game with the San Antonio Spurs last season. Interestingly, it's another Rich Paul client. So one Rich Paul client walks from the Lakers, Malik Monk, to Sacramento on a two-year deal there. Another Rich Paul client comes in to the fray with the Lakers, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong here, but they're all but out of money, free agent-wise.
Yeah.
All right, already.
Yeah, I don't know how much more the Lakers can do. Lonnie Walker comes from San Antonio, their player development system. He started to show a little bit of growth, but he got caught up in a numbers game really at his position. And the Spurs, I mean, the state of that franchise right now, they're just in a total rebuild. So obviously, you know, they didn't fight to keep him. I'm just upset that Lonnie Walker's not going to bring his hairstyle, you know, that he had in San Antonio, growing all wild and everything. It would play well in Hollywood and LA. But look, this is another guy, you know, untapped potential, athletic ability, showed some promise, low cost, comes into a veteran team, can give him a little bit of speed, a little bit of up-tempo, and a little bit of growth, and maybe in the right situation. And if the Lakers player development system is good, he can show some growth and get some minutes in that rotation. That's the hope anyway. If you're the Lakers, you're capped out at the top with your big three, you're hoping for a diamond in the rough. And maybe Lonnie Walker is that.
Yeah, and I know the Spurs are in a different situation developmentally right now. They're probably thinking more about the 2023 lottery at this point, given the moves they've made over the last few days. But what does it say about Walker that they just let him go? He was their draft pick. After 4 years, they said, so long.
Yeah, Lonnie Walker was a mid-first-round pick in the 2018 draft after 1 year at Miami. And you're right, they gave him a qualifying offer initially a few days ago. They withdrew that. That took off the restricted tag, so he was free to sign with any team in the league, and the Spurs didn't have matching rights. So he ends up in L.A. That looks like it's going to be that taxpayer mid-level exception, about $6.5 million. And that's really it as far as what the Lakers can spend. They have a few smaller trade exceptions, but like $2.7, $1.7 million. Basically, I think too close to the minimum to be relevant. But I do like what they've done philosophically. And we talked about this earlier in the show. Last year, they had a number of aging veterans, Carmelo Anthony, Dwight Howard, Wayne Ellington, Avery Bradley. I could go on. There were more. This year, you saw that graphic, they signed some younger guys. Lonnie Walker, 23 years old, has some upside. They hit it last year with Malik Monk. Monk got priced out due to non-bird rights. That's why he's now a Sacramento king. But they'll try to do it again with Walker, Damian Jones, Troy Brown Jr. I think that's what they need to do. This team needed to get younger. They needed to get more athletic, and they have limited financial resources, so they were aggressive with that taxpayer mid-level exception and also with their minimum contracts because, as we discussed earlier in the show, they have a number of roster spots and a number of needs to fill up and down their roster.
Troy Brown Jr., another player from that same draft class who is also available to the LA Lakers. So aside from moving off major salary, what can the Lakers do to shake things up?
They're pretty limited, Matt. I'll be honest with you. I mean, there's the payroll again, or excuse me, the depth chart again. But the payroll at the top, led by Russell Westbrook, who's their highest paid player, and then LeBron and AD right behind them. Then there's a huge gap down to Talen Horton-Tucker, who makes about $10 million a year, and Kendrick Nunn, who makes $5.25. And the reason is that's so important is for salary matching purposes. The guys at the top of the roster, LeBron and AD, obviously have a ton of value. The Lakers won't trade those guys. I don't think. They can't really trade Westbrook. His contract is too prohibitive. And then in the middle, Talen Horton-Tucker and Kendrick Nunn, they're important pieces financially to make a deal work, but they don't have a ton of value, especially Nunn, who missed the entire season a year ago with an injury. So that's why the Lakers are in a tough spot. I do like that Rob Pelinka and his staff are being aggressive out of the gate because we've talked about a thin free agent class, especially as far as guys you could get with not a lot of resources. So they use their mid-level, the taxpayer on Lonnie Walker, a couple minimum signings or close to it with Damian Jones and Troy Brown Jr. I like that they've been aggressive because they need a lot, and they have addressed a few needs here early, an hour and a half into free agency.
Well, it's a fascinating roster in a lot of ways. It's so top-heavy in terms of the resumes and the salaries as well. And you look at that power forward position, just for instance, and you see Wenyen Gabriel currently slotted in as the starting power forward. He's played for 6 teams in 3 years, only played 26 games in the NBA last year. I mean, this was, no offense to him, This was a guy hanging on to stay in the league, and right now kind of slots in as the starting four.
It's crazy, but these are the players that the Lakers are exposed to. I mean, these are the players that the Lakers have to get. I mean, if the Lakers are going to make a jump next season, they're going to improve, they're going to put themselves in the hunt and everything. Number one, they got to stay healthy. Number two, they got to figure out what's the best way to utilize Russell Westbrook and to hide his faults. I always thought that you should just give him the ball because LeBron can play off the ball. You know that. LeBron's talent and skill level is not going to drop if he plays off the ball. If Russell Westbrook plays off the ball, it's going to drop.
Right.
So it just makes sense, right? Make sure he has the ball. Yeah, he's high turnover and all that, but what's your alternative?
Right.
Have him play shooting guard? Have him post up at 6'3"? It doesn't make any sense. So give Russell the ball and just hope for the best because you can't trade him, right? And nobody's going to take him. And well, you could trade him, but you probably are not going to like what you get in return.
I can't imagine
it's
there's
gonna
much
be
of a
worse.
market out there.
Absolutely, it's going to be worse. So give him the ball. You got him for one more year. You're stuck with him. Try to make it work that way. What other choice do you have?
Give him the ball and hope for the best, I think, is a strategy that other teams have tried previously with Russell Westbrook. And sometimes it's worked, by the way. The guy was a league MVP. But in terms of that salary, it is not only unsavory to a lot of NBA teams, it's prohibitive in terms of trying to trade him.
It is prohibitive, especially given that he's going to be an unrestricted free agent next year. So there are a number of issues in terms of trade matching and then whether you'd be able to re-sign him.
Kevin Durant still dominating the headlines. Lots of deals getting done, though. Marvin Bagley has a new deal, an extension with the Detroit Pistons, reportedly worth $37 million for 3 years. Remember, Bagley got his wish and was traded out of Sacramento midseason last year. He spent 18 games with the Pistons, averaged just under 15 points and just under 7 rebounds per game. Not to pile on Bagley, but compare this extension with the ones that Trae Young and Luka Doncic got, both north of $200 million. And it looks like the Sacramento Kings, no, this is not a surprise headline, didn't make the right call, perhaps, with that pick a few years ago. What does this mean for Bagley in terms of moving forward with the Pistons, and what kind of value is this?
Well, it's a bet on the future of Marvin Bagley. He was the number 2 pick in the draft 4 years ago. Obviously, the beginning part of his career has not gone according to plan. But Detroit, as much as any team in the league, is taking a long horizon in terms of their development plan. And I think that direction was solidified on draft night. They got Jaden Ivey, who I think has a chance to be the best perimeter player, maybe the best player, period, to come out of this year's draft class. And they also made the trade with the Knicks, with Jalen Duren coming in. So they're in no hurry. And I think for the franchise, their bet is that this is probably an overpay, actually, in terms of Bagley's production over the first 4 years of his career. But this is still a young, talented guy. They have him on a 3-year deal, and they have a lot of money and a lot of flexibility going forward. So I think they're betting on Bagley continuing to improve. He did play better in Detroit than he had in Sacramento, and this is a team that'll be among the worst in the league next year, but has a lot of young talent and a lot of flexibility going forward.
And as we've seen a million times before, sometimes fit is as important as talent in the NBA.
Well, fit and opportunity.
Yeah.
And I think we don't know about the fit yet, but he'll have the opportunity. It's not like he's going to have to beat out an all-star or an all-NBA player to get some playing time. I would like to think that at this point in that young man's life, that he's hungry. He's hungry. He feels a little bit bad about the way things turned out in Sacramento. I'm sure he reads social media, people talking about him and all that stuff. That's got to get to you. If you're a professional and you're a competitor, that's got to get to you. And then you saw how players taken right around where you were taking got the bag, big bag, and you didn't. You got a small bag. Well, to me, that's a big bag.
To most humans, that's a large bag. Yeah.
But that's got to eat you up inside. And if that doesn't light a fire under Marvin Bagley, then nothing will. You have the opportunity now to prove yourself. The Pistons are giving you that opportunity to go in there, fight for minutes, fight for a starting job, fight for your reputation back. He's got to do that now. If it doesn't happen this year or even next year, it's never going to happen.
Right. All right, on the subject of big men, JaVale McGee, the well-traveled center, has a new home, signing with the Dallas Mavericks, or agreeing to a deal with the Dallas Mavericks. Chris Haynes doing reporting for us there. McGee has won championships, of course, with Golden State and was seen poised to reach the finals with the Phoenix Suns before that collapsed. Ironically enough, against the Dallas Mavericks.
Yeah, I thought he played well for Phoenix. I think that's a good, he's a good veteran player, a good return for Phoenix. Doesn't cost a lot of money. You don't have to worry about backup. Well, we think a backup center. I don't know. We'll see how things turn out with DeAndre Ayton. Maybe he's getting more minutes, but ideally, I think in that second team position for him, at this stage of his career, is a great situation with JaVale and a great situation for Phoenix.
On a permanent basis, and given his age, I thought this might have been one of top 2 seasons, maybe 3 seasons ever for JaVale McGee last year with Phoenix. He was great for them.
He had a very good year. The Suns won 64 games, the best record in the league. DeAndre Ayton was the starter, but when McGee was in the game, he really produced for the Suns per minute, as you referenced, and the team was very good. And this is why being an executive is so hard, guys, this time of year, because you have all these balls that you're trying to juggle and not let hit the ground. Dallas, for example, looked like they lost Jalen Brunson to the New York Knicks earlier tonight. They pivoted quickly to McGee. Obviously, different players at different positions. But for Phoenix, it seems like they're big game hunting going after Kevin Durant. JaVale McGee wanted a mid-year